On a rainy Memorial Day weekend in 2026. We've been doing the wedding parable, the wedding feast, where one guy gets chosen, apparently a servant, because he calls the deacons in to get thrown into outer darkness. And then we have that statement, many are called, but few are chosen. It's the only place it appears, the only place Jesus says it. And the one guy who was chosen as the chosen elect gets thrown into outer darkness, so it doesn't appear it's what was taken from it later is, oh, those are the important people. And part of the play on words is, oh, wolves and a rooster as a bird. So what, and I covered what Jesus said last week. And what I want to do now is look at how others use this word. Did they use it in a good or a bad sense? That is, the not so good sense is the way Jesus appears to have given it. And that will let us infer other things about authorship and certain other verses as to what they mean. And we have that. So we'll look at a little bit on the early church fathers, Clement, Ignatius, and Barnabas. Look a little bit about what Paul and Peter said. And in each case, we'll try to decide, was that actually translated correct? Did they have the right meaning? And we'll get some inferences from that. Let's look here. This is Barnabas. And he says, I omitted the whole thing, let us be on guard, lest we should be found to be, as it is written, many called but few chosen. He's obviously referring to that same part. Sorry, I had the other one. It was getting from two sources, the sound. And when I analyze this in the context, it's kind of neutral. It doesn't say if the elect is good or bad. But that's one of the things. You wouldn't want to say it's bad if everyone else says it's good. You just want to be neutral and not agree to what it is. So that was just Barnabas. Now Clement from early 2nd century. I'm reading the yellow here. I need to remember. To these men who lived holy lives, there was joined a vast multitude of the elect. Is that what Jesus said? Few are chosen, few are elected, many are called. Somehow, in less than 100 years, it turned into a vast multitude of the chosen elect. What's going on here? Why do we have this whole elect? And that's what we're looking at. How did these words change? We'll just look at the part here where he says that. Woe to that person rather than cause one of my elect to sin. Aren't the elect already doing what they're not supposed to be doing? And he's mixing up this other verse. It would have been good for him, that one, not to have born, and that comes from Judas. So he's putting together different things in the millstone rather than pervert one of my elect. So based on what we found, this is not what Jesus says, but it got turned into this. Here's Ignatius. Remember, Ignatius, he was arrested and he was sent to Rome and he got to write letters on the way there. He was supposed to be fed. He was going to be fed to the wild beasts as entertainment. And so he had all these letters that were written. And the one letter includes the first mention of what we call the Catholic Church, the Catholicos Catholic Church. Dearly loved by God, the Father of Jesus Christ, elect and worthy of God. Oh, elect are worthy of God. You see, words can change their meaning, so we're looking at how Jesus used it and how it got used later. And later to the Ephesus, I'm reading, unchangeable glory forever, united and elect through genuine suffering by the will of the Father in Jesus Christ. He appears to be using elect, those few, in a good sense. Okay, those were a few of the early church fathers that used that actual word then as a noun. Let's look at how Paul uses it. And Paul is Appears he wrote Romans and a few other books, and some he may not have. Romans 8:33. Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? Is it God that justifies? It is, just a second here. In fact, on the stream I was losing some of my, he was going into another camera, so I may have to upload something later. There we go. Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? It is God that justifieth. Now, I looked at Google AI. It emphasizes the security of believers, highlighting that God, as the ultimate judge, has already acquitted them. Who shall bring any charge against these elect, these good elect, right? God's elect refers to those who have responded to God's call and have been chosen by Him. Is that what it says in the wedding feast? The elect gets thrown out. That one gets thrown out, that few. Who are those elect? What do they get charged with? Is this like an electron charge or a static charge in a cloud? Or some batteries that you get charged from? In fact, those batteries were not chargeable, so I couldn't use my charge card for them. They're not chargeable. And the one son was really bad. He was flying a kite during a thunderstorm, so his father grounded him. Yeah, and you get that. Yeah, that's not good. Who shall accuse against elect of a God? And I've noticed this. He says elect of a God. Usually it says of God, the God of a God. It's interesting how Paul is using that. God is the one who justifies. Some translations. NIV. Who will bring any charge against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies. Now the NIV, usually, it's pretty close, but it's a little ambiguous there. New Living. Who dares accuse us, whom God has chosen for His own? No one, for God Himself has given us right standing with Himself. The Berean literal, who will bring an accusation against the elect of God? God is the one justifying. So yeah, it's an accusation is what the word means. To find out, let's go back 2 verses, 29 and 30. For whom He did foreknow, He also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom He did predestinate, them He also called, and whom He called, them He also justified, and whom He justified, them He also glorified. Is Paul saying that many were called? Isn't that what it says in the wedding feast? All these were called? Then we have the few who are chosen. Then we get to the next verse. What shall we say to this? If God be for us, who can be against us? Who's ever heard that as a battle cry? Or posted, oh, look, He's for us, who can be against us? It actually is hyper as hyper. It's who is above us. Isn't God above us? Yes. In Latin, it went to pro, like before or on behalf of. And then the kath is downwards. Who could be below us, against us? In Latin, that's changed to contra as against. So for some reason, the Latin went to the battle cry. What Paul is saying is, God is above us. He's making a little play. It's what I just talked about, predestined, called. Who can be down on us? Below in the text, he's going to do that next. And that's where the verse is, where we have that elect. Who could be down on us? Yeah. He that spareth not his own son, but delivered him from us all. How shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Who then is down on us? Who should we charge the elect, those who are trying to deceive us and take us the wrong way? No, it's God that justifieth. Even if they're doing the wrong thing, we're not supposed to be doing that. It's He who condemneth. It is Christ that died. So we have this down against, and if we look at it that way, yeah, Paul understands what the elect is. The elect are the not good, the birds, the ones who are trying to deceive us. They are down on us. But we're not supposed to accuse them and charge them. I mean, he called us in the previous verses above in the text. This is down in the text. So Paul appears to understand that that is a not good sense. In fact, in Romans 12, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. Give the place to God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. And that's from the Old Testament. So he does say that. Now let's look. Paul uses another one. This is in 16. He uses the word elect. Salute or greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother and mine. Now that word Rufus is Latin. It comes from a word that means red. So if you had red hair, you might be called Rufus. And we don't know if this guy's name was Rufus. Maybe he was just using it so people would know. But that's where the Rufus comes from. It has to do with red. And you could give a whole sermon on that, right? A refrigerated magnet sermon on Rufus. Oh, he was great and did all this. Elect is not supposed to be good. The Google AI, he's chosen in the Lord. This phrase emphasizes the concept of election, a core theological idea in Paul's writings, suggesting that Rufus's position in the faith was not accidental but divinely chosen. The AI just repeats what it grabs from all the other places. So it has trouble extrapolating outside. Now, why would he salute Rufus as being chosen? We're going to skip the verses, but in Romans 16, 15 verses, 25 people were called. That's many. There were 2 apostles called. There were some saints called, and 3 households called. There was one chosen, Rufus. I wonder if Rufus was doing something he shouldn't have been doing, and Paul didn't want to point out it directly. But look aren't there many there? They're doing what they should be, the apostles and so forth. And there's one chosen. I'm not sure Rufus is an example for everyone else. In fact, one of those in verse 7, salute Andronicus and Junia, my kinsmen, and my fellow prisoners who are of note among the apostles, who also were in Christ before me. Now, John Chrysostom, Archbishop of Constantinople, and his name means golden mouth in Greek, because they were Greek there, not Latin. He wrote this about Junia. Greet Andronicus and Junia, who are outstanding among the apostles. To be an apostle is something great, but to be outstanding among the apostles, just think what a wonderful song of praise that is. They were outstanding on the basis of their works and virtuous actions. Indeed, how great the wisdom of this woman must have been that she was even deemed worthy of the title of apostle. We got a woman apostle here. Now, 1,000 years later, the people in Rome, who didn't know really Greek, it was all Latin, they decided that must have been a mistake, and they kind of, must have been a man. Well, that's not what they said in the early church and in Constantinople, where they knew Greek and they knew what was going on, and she's still venerated, with the icons as one of the apostles. You mean she wasn't chosen as an elect, just Rufus, the one out of all those apostles and saints and households? Maybe Paul knew that that wasn't good. Let's go to Colossians. Put on, therefore, as the elect, you are the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering. Gets translated as good, right? Now, Colossians is filled with problems. One of those comes up six verses later. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husbands, as is fit in the Lord. Doesn't look like Colossians was written by Paul at all. And it's not just this one word elect. It goes through the whole Colossians, and Titus is like that. Apparently some people that voted in these books liked certain verses, and they brought in the whole book just for that purpose. Interestingly, some of the things the United Methodist Church, and I have this elsewhere, they support certain decisions they've made. And we've heard this twice in our sermons here in the past 2 years, because they use the verses right before the wives submit, but for some reason they don't want to use those. They just pick out the ones they like. Well, I'm not sure you should be using anything in Colossians to support any ideas, because the elect is just one of the problems. 1 Thessalonians, knowing, brethren, beloved, your election of God. You are elected. Do we elect God, or does God elect us? Ignoring the fact it might not be good. There are all these problems in 1 Thessalonians. That idea of the rapture comes in 1 Thessalonians. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout and the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up. We shall be harpooned, harpazo, that's where the word harpoon comes from, together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And that's used to support the rapture. Rapture is Latin. Harpazo or harpoon is the word. Arpi also means a bird going down and snatching things up. And so, did Paul really write this? Does he know what's happening? Because in the seventh kingdom parable, and we saw others, and the elect, Jesus says, is going to come in and take the elect out because they're not good. They've been doing, and so, yeah. I wonder if Paul actually wrote 1 Thessalonians. And when you do this, it's always easier to write a prequel than the one after. Because you know what the letter 2 Thessalonians is, so you pretend to write one, and this happened a lot in ancient times. You write one before, so you can throw in a few things. You say, oh, his theology wasn't as advanced and this and that. Yeah, let's look at that carefully. What does Jesus say in Matthew 12? Or, how can one enter the strong man's house? Does Satan have a house? Is he the strong man? And rapture, harpoon, snatch up his vessels, the people working for the strong man, Satan. Unless he first binds Satan, and then he will rapture, snatch up, harpoon his house. He's pulling out Satan's vessels, just like he's going to pull out those elect that are going in outer darkness. That kind of fits. Let's go to 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy is filled with logical problems and theological issues, and 2 Timothy appears good. Much better than 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy has all sorts of things, so I don't recommend using 1 Timothy verses. I charge thee before God and Jesus Christ and the elect angels. Are the angels now elect? Are they chosen? And it's one of these little problems we have in 1 Timothy. And thou observe these things without preferring one before another, doing nothing by partiality. So we have some issues there with those elect. Let's go to a few more verses, 2nd chapter. Let the women learn in silence with all subjection. How easy is it to learn when one's in subjection? I don't think you learn too well. And the reason I'm bringing these verses up is they got thrown in with the others when they elected to decide bring in certain disputed books and so forth. Next verse. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. Is that really what Paul was saying? He didn't treat Junia that way. He didn't treat Lydia that way. He had other women doing things. The theologians and commentators, they have to explain, how did Paul change his position? I'm not sure Paul changed his position. I think some people wrote these things to support their own views. Suppose you're a pastor, you're running a church, and people don't agree with you. Oh, we found this letter from Paul, and look at this. He agrees with what I've been saying. Yeah. Obviously, the author means that men can teach and not women, whoever the author is. Does it also mean that men can usurp authority over other men? You see the little logical issues when you start looking at it? And 1 Timothy is filled with those. And here we have, and a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, which worshiped God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, and she attended unto the things that were spoken of Paul. And he had her do a number of things. Now, it was hundreds of years later when you weren't allowed to wear purple because of the emperor, but at that time you could. You're not supposed to dress up in nice attire. Well, how do you think she sold her stuff? You think she wore some things that she was going to sell? Or just showed, yeah. And there were, anyone remember what another woman's dress shop in Elizabethtown? Yeah, there was Goodell and Grace Blau dress shop at 116. The reason I do it is one of my friends told me that she went to the church she went to, said that she always liked Lydia because she was selling apparel, and Lydia was honored and so forth by Paul, and she sold purple or attire. So that was interesting. Oops. Let's go to 1 Timothy, a few verses after. In like manner that women adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array. Again, this is the same 1 Timothy that had the elect wrong. Lydia was a seller of expensive purple. Would Lydia wear what she was selling as an example? Would this not be permitted by Paul? Obviously, he didn't say anything about it, and it wasn't a problem. Again, the whole thing in here, you ask yourself, was 1 Timothy actually written by Paul? And almost every verse in 1 Timothy has issues, which I have at length on the website, but yeah. Now let's go to 2 Timothy. He says, therefore I endure all for the elect, that they may also obtain the salvation which is in Christ Jesus with eternal glory. You mean the elect might not get eternal salvation? They might not have salvation? Why is he enduring it? And it says it says through the elect. So I'm enduring all this by the elect. In other words, the elect are causing problems for me. But I'm enduring it that they might get salvation because they might realize the error of their ways. You see how they change these little things? They did that in the cutoff verses. They said, oh, for the elect's sake. No, it meant by. They're doing it. For the elect. No, it means by. They're doing this. And they're doing these things to them, and Paul is enduring it, hoping they'll realize what they're doing. So yeah, 2 Timothy, when Paul uses that, Paul appears to know what that means. We go to Titus, which is it has a lot of the same stuff in Colossians. Exact same phrases, verses. So it's like the same person wrote them. According to the faith of God's elect. God's elect, the faith of them? Acknowledging of the truth, which is after godliness. To Titus, mine own son, is it good or not to be an elect of God? Now let's go to, and that one wasn't real clear, but yeah. 1 Peter, to the strangers, the elect. And they translated as strangers. Because what would you do if you said to the elect through Pontus? That doesn't fit your idea of what the elect should be. So when they translate this, we better not translate elect as elect, because those are, we can't figure this out, so we're going to make them strangers. Yeah. And we have these, and he does a lot of this. Oh, we go to chapter 3. Likewise, ye wives, be in submission to your own husbands. That is, if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the so forth. In other words, a lot of these verses that the conservative churches took in because, everything has to be inerrant. Some of the stuff you took in was voted in and they were controversial, and I'm not sure they should be in there. To whom coming as unto a living stone, disallowed indeed of men, but chosen of God and precious. Oh, you're precious, of value, because you're chosen? That's not what the guy was who got thrown into outer darkness. So we have a number of issues in 1 Peter. 1 Peter has a number of problems. 2 Peter doesn't have those. You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood. Really? We're the elect? We're chosen? Are we going into outer darkness? And so forth. Now, we go to 2 Peter, but he that lacketh these things is blind and cannot see afar off. The Greek word actually has to do with myopia, is where we get that word from. Can't see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. Wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if ye do these things, you shall never fall. When I look at this closely, he doesn't really say if that's good or bad. It appears to be what Barnabas was doing. If everyone else thinks it's good, you'll get them all mad if you say it's bad. So what you do is you write what you're saying in a somewhat ambiguous way. You should make your calling sure and your election sure. You should make sure you're not one of those elect that are going to get thrown out. You see how you can take that either way? And if you don't want to offend those who think it's good, you just write it in that sense. And you can do that with lots of things. You make it ambiguous so people hear what they want to hear, because there's no use getting them all upset at that point. There are some in 2 John to the elect lady. I'm not sure about 2 John, and there's not too much there that really is of theological importance. So we're going to just skip through there. It appears one time in Revelation, and it's not clear. Called and chosen in that verse. And so it's not really clear, so we're just going to leave that as we don't know what that is. So, the summary. Remember, we went through the whole wedding feast. We decided elect wasn't good because it was the one that got thrown out. Went how Matthew used it. Jesus uses it 4 times in a not good sense, but it gets mistranslated to be good. Romans uses it in 2 senses. Remember Rufus and who could be down on this? And with the elect, those against him, mistranslated to be good. Now Colossians, 1 Timothy, 1 Peter, it's a little bit of an authorship issue because they don't use elect in the sense Jesus uses it. There are also a lot of other problems in those books, but I'm just looking at the one. Titus is almost like Colossians. It wasn't real clear. And 2 Peter, 2 John, Revelation, not too concerned about that. 2 Peter fits either way, so it could go that way. And 2 Timothy was mistranslated to be good. So this is just one little bit of research. The important things, I think, is that some of these things were changed to fit what they wanted it to be. Other books were brought in for some reason, and some were disputed, some weren't, but they have issues with them. When they have these issues, they usually translate it to avoid the issues. And so this is just one piece of evidence, but it shows some of those things, those statements about women, you got to take that with a huge grain of salt. As Corbett used to say, he'd say take things with a huge grain of salt of other things. Because I'm not sure that's actually valid. And you got to look at how Paul uses it. And a lot of the women verses with the submission appears to come from Ephesians, which if we give it that Paul wrote it, he never mentioned women in there, and they added that later. He was making a vague allusion to how you should be. You should be as the woman and submitting to God. And then they took that and get these different letters, and all of a sudden it gets really dogmatic and really literal and specific. So anyway, there's one piece of evidence in the elect or chosen to fit with looking at those. So when I talk to pastors who will listen to me, which are a number of them, not here, I just say, well, you don't need to confuse everyone, but I would try not to use verses from certain books like 1 Timothy or 1 Peter, because if what they're saying is supported by Jesus, go back to what Jesus says and use what Jesus says. So try not to use references from books of the Bible that don't appear to be totally valid. Then you don't have to answer questions of why does he say this here and why does he say that there. So what we've seen is Jesus uses the word elect in a not good way. We actually get that in the English in the parable of the wedding feast. There are uses in the Old Testament we skipped, but it was just a word. It wasn't a code word. When Jesus uses it as a code word, you got to figure out what does that mean. Then, it took a life on its own, and by the time of the early church fathers, the elect were good. And we can see that transition with Paul in Romans and 2 Timothy, knowing it's not good, but some of these other books that came in later, all of a sudden the elect are the good. So it's something to think about. So we're going to be off for 3 weeks. I'm going to be streaming something, and I'll try to come out, and then we'll come back. I think we're going to look at Matthew 19 and 20. Remember, that's the part with giving all your riches to the poor. And he has other verses which are not well understood. Then we have the parable of the vineyard workers. And as I go through that, they're all connected. Whatever you see in the first part is connected in the vineyard workers, and it explains a lot of things that are otherwise difficult to understand. So thank you. That's been Election Callings as used by others and not Jesus.